Hey everyone. Anyone familiar with my channel will know that I've done a series of interviews with ex-Scientologists called the Scientology Experience, and those have received a lot of attention and have been pretty good. And I was very happy with the results of those and the education and the material that we got out about Scientology and different people's times with it. Something special occurred to me to do on that line recently, and that was something I did last week. I went out and I had a conversation, an interview of sorts, with my mother. And of course, I was well, my family got involved with Scientology pretty early on in my life, and I was raised with it and around it. And then I formally got involved when I was about 15 years old. I joined staff, much to the dismay of my parents, when I was 17 years old, right out of high school. And when I was 25, 8 years later, I went from staff to joining the Sea organization in Los Angeles. And I did that for another 17 years until I left in 2012. You've heard a lot on my channel, if you've watched or listened to me, about my experiences with Scientology and my views on it, and I've broken it down in lots of different ways and answered a lot of questions about it. But I haven't talked a lot about my childhood or growing up with it or the experience of it there. And I thought that this would be a good opportunity to do it. So this series of this four-part series with my mom is not being put under the Scientology Experience, because it's more than that to me and to her. And we hope that by doing this, we will be able to help parents or family members out there who have family involved with Scientology, or some other destructive cult for that matter, to stay connected with your family members and eventually help them to escape and get away from the destructive cult that they're in. Often family members are frustrated and do it wrong somehow and create more of a problem in protesting the destructive cult than they, even though it's done from a place of love and hope and compassion, it's not done right. And so the person who's in the cult ends up breaking off ties or disconnecting. That didn't happen with my mom and I. And it occurred to me that there were reasons for that, and that we should talk about those things, because they might be, that what we did might be helpful to other people. So, without further ado, here's my mom. Hi everybody, so we are here in California. I've flown out to talk to my mom. This is my mom. Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
So I guess to start let's just start with, how did you get into Scientology back in the 70s, right?
It was in the 70s. We were living in a little town in Southern California, and you were around 2 years old. As I recall, it was around 1971. And your dad had heard from his brother that there was a communications course in Scientology that had helped him, and so he recommended it to Larry, your dad. And at the time, we needed that course because our marriage was really kind of shaky at the time. And not only did your dad tell me about that course, but he told his best friend at the time about that course. And so Larry got the three of us to walk in there one evening and learn about Scientology. And so we went for an intro lecture.
Wow. Okay, and this was in Southern California.
It was.
Like in the LA area?
It was in Pasadena.
Oh.
We were actually living in a little area outside of Pasadena, but if I remember right, it was Pasadena or Mission.
The Mission
was not an org. It
That's
was a
right.
Mission. It was a mission that was run by a mission holder named Carl Barney.
Okay. Now, had you guys were divorced at this point?
We were separated for sure, And yeah, we were divorced.
Okay,
We were divorced.
that's what I thought. Yeah,
we
because
were.
I grew up with the idea that
Yeah.
Scientology was basically responsible for getting my parents back together, and the details have I've never really dived fully into that, but
Yeah.
that
We
was
weren't divorced for all that long because actually we did find Scientology. We did find a way to communicate. We divorced for the reasons that young people divorce, and when we figured out how to communicate better, we did. So it kind of helped resolve the issues we were having at the time, and at the point that he and I were both on the same track in Scientology, it helped a lot because we were working toward a common goal outside of our marriage too, you know.
right.
And yeah, and we thought it would, benefit us and in the long run benefit you. So there you go.
Right.
So that's what we thought.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
It often is.
Yes. So, okay, but I mean, it's not like I had a horrible childhood or something. So, so then what happened? So you started doing some courses, or you did the communications course, and then, we don't need to get into a whole service by service breakdown of what you did, but what was the broad strokes? How did you guys then get in, and then you joined staff? Like, what happened?
Well, we were doing courses at the mission. I'm trying to remember the timeline and when we joined staff, and I just don't remember how far we had gone in our auditing or training before we actually joined staff. I know that one of the reasons that we joined staff, which was at the mission level, it was just going to be in the part-time because they didn't have like a, what do they call it at the orgs where it's foundation and
the day foundation schedule thing.
It was kind of that way in the mission. You could either work during the day or you could work during the evening, or you could work when you could work. And so I remember that I think the first job that I had there was being a supervisor for the communications course.
Oh, wow.
I was an ethics officer for a while. I did that supervise. I liked being a supervisor on that course because that course, if there was something in Scientology that changed my life, it was probably being the supervisor on that course.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What would you say stands out to you now as like why was that? Why was supervising that course? Because I understand what you mean. I was a course supervisor, and you get the information so much better. You're helping other people get it, and it does make it a better thing than just doing the course itself. But what was your experience?
It was fun. I was fairly new to Scientology myself. I had more wins than not. I believed in what we were doing and where we were going. And the group that I belonged to at that time at the Pasadena Mission was a really neat group of people who we all thought we just thought we were going to save the world. We really thought that was what we were going to do. But we all had young families, and we were all had jobs, and we were living our life. We didn't just do Scientology, but we all became friends on the outside as well as, with Scientology. So, and we were raising our kids, and we were having a good time in life. And on the course as a supervisor, it was so fun to see people having realizations that they hadn't had before, and getting through the discipline of the TRs and just doing things that probably to them seemed absolutely stupid, but we kept saying, "You'll see in the long run if you just stick with this. You'll see you'll see," and to watch people have just wins and cognitions and walk out of there just beaming, and we were delivering a service. There was no doubt in my mind or in the student's mind. Now you have to realize that was the first course, and it took kind of a light hand to not be mamby-pamby, but at the same time to not be so overbearing that it scared people away, or it took away from the fun element of it too. Because that's if people aren't having a good time and aren't winning with it, forget it. They're not going to come back.
Right.
So anyway, we figured it out. I mean, it was working pretty darn well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the Mission Network at that time also was working very well. I mean, we were in with a group of people that knew where they were going, and they knew what they wanted, and they as well as I thought they were doing the right thing.
Right. Okay, good. And we'll get into more details about
Yeah.
that too. So, about how long were you on staff?
Oh my gosh. I bet you were 2 when we got into Scientology. I'm terrible with figuring out time tracks. But I remember you were 6 and we were still on staff.
Now we moved up to Santa Maria when I started high school.
Right.
And that would have been 1983.
Okay.
82, 83, right?
Okay.
So, because I graduated in 87. So, yeah, 83, we would have moved up
Okay.
there. So, that was me in 7th, 8th grade,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Somewhere in
was
that
us
period, there was a big upheaval in the Mission Network,
Mm-hmm.
and the mission holders, especially in Southern California, who had all been very prosperous and doing well up until then. I don't know the whole inside of that story, but I remember Carl Barney and his senior guys coming back from Flag, where he met with, I think Diana was at that time. I think Diana was running the Mission Network
Mm-hmm.
for Ron.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some very derogatory and negative things to say about her. And it wasn't long after that before a number of the missions and the mission holders were declared. Missions were turned into orgs eventually. Ron didn't appreciate what the Mission Network was doing because they were truly at odds with the org. We would go down to the org in LA, and the missions that Barney had were run well. They looked good. They were presentable. It was a pleasant experience. The poor orgs were just starving. They were starving. And I have to say that the missions were absconding with a lot of the money that could have been flowing to the orgs. And as the missions got bigger and more powerful, because they had all these people coming into them that weren't flowing to the orgs, because the missions wanted to deliver more and more services. And they were given permission to do that. It's not like, they were doing something illegal at the time. But eventually, it just they were accused of stopping the flow to the orgs.
Right.
And that was a bad time in Scientology.
Right.
And a lot changed at that time.
Okay, so you guys were on staff through the 70s and early, maybe into the early 80s or 1980 or something like that around that time. But we had we know somewhere in there, Barney had gone to Flag, comes back, right? Nattery about Diana, and there's this whole blow up brewing, which we know from history was not pretty. Like it was a war, and the mission holders lost.
Right.
Right. And
that's exactly right.
That's exactly what happened. Now you guys though were kind of caught in the crossfire a bit.
That's how I felt.
Yeah. So describe that. What happened there, and how did you?
I believed in Carl Barney because I saw the outcome of what his work had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I also totally believed in what Ron said. And now these two kind of icons in Scientology are at odds with each other. So that didn't sit well with me. I don't like being in the middle of a confusion, and I don't function well with that. But I literally have forgotten about a lot of it. The big thing I remember is that your dad and I must have agreed that we were going to go to the Guardian's office together. And because we did that, that's what we did. And at the time, I think that the reason that we did that is because we had goldenrod written on us. So at least I know I did on me.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of being in ethics trouble, I was assigned to wash windows at the mission, which I was doing one afternoon before I went to work as a nurse.
Right, because while the whole time you were on staff in the mission, you were also a pediatric nurse
I had a
working at a
job.
hospital.
Yeah,
Right.
I was a normal person.
Right. Well, I just want to make that clear. It's not like you were full-time staff
Nope.
all
I
this
was
time
not
at the
full-time
mission.
staff.
You were actually a nurse, and you were working night shift a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at any rate, I'm washing windows and I'm thinking, the heck am I doing? I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a Scientologist, I'm a daughter, I'm a human being, I'm a window washer? Come on, really? Really? So I just put my bucket down and left. I just walked out. And I didn't say anything to anybody, I just left. And I think I got a call from the ethics officer later, and I just said, I'm not coming back. I'm just done. I'm not coming back. So your dad and I really tried very hard to follow policy, and part of the policy in Scientology was if you are having a problem with Scientology, you don't blabber it all over to everybody else. You just don't, what is it, spreading bad PR.
Yeah, the black PR, yeah.
Yeah, do that. And I agree with that. And I agree with that in my own life. Personally, I agree with that. So we just walked out. We just left. And one day we were there, and the next day we weren't, as far as the staff was concerned, and that's how we wanted it. And then we decided to go to the guardian's office because we thought, well, it's not working for us at the mission, so maybe we need to report some of the things that are happening to us because we didn't think it was right.
Mm.
So we went down to the guardian's office, and I don't remember the name of the person we talked to. It was a great terminal. He was a great terminal. Very objective, very understanding. But he asked us if we would be willing to go back to work on staff as their spy. And I said, I can't do that.
Wow, they actually wanted to have you guys go and re-infiltrate
Yeah, they did.
the mission. And
Could you just go back and do your jobs and then let us know what's going on? Just tell your ComEv or something. And I just said...
ComEv being a committee of evidence,
Yeah.
which is supposed to be a fact-finding body, but to, determine what's happened with some situation and then determine a course of recommendations or punishment or discipline for the person who's being ComEv'd or being given the committee of evidence. And so you guys were getting
I think
committee
that,
of evidence.
I think in the beginning it was just probably a B of I
Board of
in the
Investigation.
beginning. But at that level, because we had left,
Yeah.
I think it was turning into a ComEv, if I remember right.
And a ComEv is the most serious justice-type action a person can get in Scientology. As a result of a committee of evidence, a person could be declared a suppressive person, or they could be cleared totally, or something in between. Usually with a ComEv, you get a ton of amends, like hundreds of hours, and you have to, there might be other disciplinary actions, that the person has to do
and
as
you
a
have
result.
to pay a whole bunch of money back.
Yeah, and that too.
Yeah.
Right.
Because for any courses or auditing that you get in Scientology at a discounted rate for having been on staff,
Yep.
once you decide that you don't want to be on staff anymore and you get declared, then you owe thousands of dollars, which,
Right.
yeah.
The freeloader's debt.
Yep, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So we were now freeloaders. But anyway, I just said I couldn't go back and do that. I mean, if I couldn't spread, I just couldn't do that. I'm just not a spy kind of person.
So you weren't going to go back and spy.
No.
So you said
No,
thank you very much,
thank
but
you
no
very
thank
much.
you.
We'll take our lumps.
Okay.
And we literally lost friends who we had had for years and years overnight. Because they were instructed not to talk to us, and we weren't going to go talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed our life.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Now, you guys, though, got back in good graces with the church in terms of not being disconnected and whatnot. I mean, because you carried on
We
and did
did.
more services.
We did.
Do you remember how you guys did that or what happened with that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Hey, here's what's so weird. When people say let it go, when they say that,
Yeah.
there's a way to do that.
Mm.
And it's not just suppressing stuff. I mean, I have my memory at this stage of my life is not great. But I had worked through a lot of stuff in connection with Scientology on my own over the years by trying to, use reason and logic, and work through enough of this stuff that it kind of balanced out. Because there was a point where I was aware that it had done as much good for me as bad for me. And that was just being really honest with myself. If I was really honest with myself, I got a lot out of being in Scientology. Could I have gotten that in other places in the world? Yeah, I probably think I could have. But I'm not a New Age kind of person. I had already left the Catholic Church when I was young. I don't know where I would have gone to have gotten that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe back to college might have been an idea. I don't know. But in general, the times that I was in it when it was good, it was very good, and when it was bad, it was bad. And then, however we got that cleared up, we probably paid our freeloaders debt off, or had it reduced, maybe because we had gone to the GO. I don't remember that piece of it, but it didn't crush our lives. We went on. We were working, we were living, Larry started a business. I worked for him for a while, as you did.
Mm-hmm.
So after a lot of working through my Scientology issues, I just decided that it balanced out. And when you have something that's in balance, you let it go. It's not there to, you rise above it.
Right.
It's a part of your story in your life, but it's not the story that your life revolves around. So I had gotten to that point in my life, and then you got out of Scientology. I'm not saying that I discounted what you were doing in Scientology, because that obviously caused a problem in our relationship. But I had figured out how to work that out too, so that it just didn't get worse than it was.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I stand today, I guess. So trying to remember some of this today is like, what? That was like another lifetime for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Scientology, or what happens in it, doesn't have to ruin a person's life. I got into Scientology because they said, oh, here's a little graph on this little test that you just took. Here's what's ruining your life. So at this end of my life, Scientology isn't going to be what ruins my life. Nothing ruins my life, other than what I give the power away to.
Right. Okay. So, okay. Let's take a look at one last part of this story. Because after you guys got off staff and the whole mission network blew up, which I think was 82, 83, something like that, you guys were off staff at that point. You'd gone through all of that GO nonsense.
Right.
The GO was shortly thereafter disbanded. I mean, things just went crazy in Scientology internationally.
Yeah.
And I've already documented all that on my channel and all that stuff, so we don't have to revisit all that. But from our point of view, we moved from Pasadena.
Yeah, we did.
And we went up to Santa Maria, California, and that's when Dad started his business.
Yep.
And we were about an hour away or so from the Santa Barbara org, which had been a mission under Carl Barney.
That's right.
Right? Pasadena, Santa Barbara, San Diego, Valley. All of Orange County. Not Orange County, but these other ones.
He had 5 of them.
And they'd all been converted into orgs. And from missions to orgs, right? Because Carl Barney and those other guys kind of got swept under the rug and deleted from history, and they wanted to just forget about that whole chapter. So we moved up to Santa Maria, and you guys were doing services off and on at Flag.
That's correct.
At that point, right?
So somehow or another, whatever ethics stuff that we had going
Yeah.
had been cleared up
That's right.
enough that we were allowed to do services again. We certainly didn't do staff again, but
Right.
yeah.
And Dad got up through OT 5 and then went to Flag to do 6 and 7, which were at that time the highest OT levels that were released,
That's right.
because OT 8 didn't come out until I think 1988.
Right.
So this was earlier than that. So Dad
Yeah.
was doing the top of the bridge, and then you were going to go do that.
Well, I went to Flag to do OT5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I had some real issues at Flag. Real weird issues at Flag. I was back in good standing with the church. We were practicing Scientology when, at a little business that we had. We were still using Scientology principles. The people that were partners, and also other people that worked at the mission, were all Scientologists in good standing. It's not like we had totally left Scientology or anything. We were still doing Scientology, but certainly not interested in being on staff anymore. Anyway, I go to Flag to do this, to these services. The Flag services were absolutely horrible. I was, again, pretty naive and pretty idealistic about what I expected. And it wasn't at all what I would wait all day long to get into an auditing session, to get a session scheduled. They'd call me at 10 in the morning, make sure you eat, make sure this, make sure that, and we'll get you in as soon as we can. 10 at night, I still hadn't been in. I'd get a call at 10 at night. Are you sessionable? No, I'm not, actually. Thanks, but no thanks. And so I spent a lot of time there just wasting time, really just wasting time. And your dad and I were not doing well in our relationship at the time. So I was really, what Scientology terms, very PTS. I really had no business even being there. A lot of conflicting things going on back at home.
Right. PTS meaning, just real quickly,
Sure.
meaning potential trouble source, meaning there were lots of problems here. And
my life was not as stable as it should have been.
Exactly. And so in Scientology, when somebody has that going on, that is supposed to be addressed and dealt with, not anything else. And then once it's dealt with and handled and resolved, then the person gets on with their auditing or their training, their courses. So you had this whole situation going on, and I'm sure you weren't, lying about it or telling them it wasn't that way.
Nobody asked about it.
But they weren't, yeah.
It was the weirdest thing. Honestly, it was the weirdest thing. So at any rate, I have this time that I'm at Flag, and I was there for, a month or so.
Wow.
I was there a long time.
Wow.
Getting nothing done. So I decided somewhere along the line, well, heck, if I came here to do, something that was going to give me some spiritual growth, and I'm not getting in session, what could I do? So I decided I'd stop smoking, because I thought, well, if I go home and I'm a non-smoker when I go home, I've accomplished something really big. So if that's all I have to do while I'm walking around, because I would walk in the park, I'd go to the department store, I was just freelancing it. I don't know.
Wow.
What happened. So anyway, maybe they saw how out of it I was. I have no idea. But anyway, so I decided I'd stop smoking. So that was my big win in being at Flag the last time that I was at Flag. And that was 1989.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I quit smoking in 1989, and I never went back to Flag again.
And that was that.
And that was that.
Right, because that was pretty much the last time you did services or tried to do services. And
why would I do that again?
Yeah, and then you were out of there.
Yeah.
And Dad finished OT7 at some point before, around that time.
Yeah.
Right?
That year.
And OT8 had been released at that point, but Dad never really seemed to have much interest in doing that. So, there you go. So then, briefly, Scientologically, like, that was the last services that you did. Was there a point where you sort of realized that, or thought to yourself or decided, okay, that's behind me now. I'm done. Like, was there a point where you realized?
Well, after that thing at Flag, um, see, I was OT5. I think I went to either finish it up or a test um, or go on to 6. Whatever it was, it should have been a huge ethics cycle is what it should have been. It should have been a chaplain cycle is what it should have been. But
With you and Dad?
sure.
Okay.
But that's not what anybody was going for, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to even waste time on that. So at any rate, yeah, I didn't do any Scientology after that at all.
Mm-hmm. And at what point would you say you realized that you were done?
Then.
Yeah. Right then. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it was lip service after that. There wasn't. I knew I wasn't going back to Flag, and I knew there was no place else. I mean, where else am I? What else am I going to do?
Right.
So, but it was a very tumultuous time in my life, because eventually your dad and I divorced, and well, actually before that, we moved. We were you joined.
I had joined staff in 1987.
That's right.
So I was out of the house
So you
by
were
the
out
time
of the
this
house by
happened.
then.
Yeah.
And Jason was still home.
Right.
And we there was a falling out in the business side of it, and so Larry sold his portion of the business. We moved to San Diego for a brief point because he thought he would find work there. Eventually, the job that he got ended up in Vacaville. And by then, I was just, Scientologist wasn't happening in our life at all.
Okay.
Except for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I was involved with it.
Right.
And I wasn't fully aware that any of this had gone on. In fact, I wasn't even a little bit aware that any of this had happened.
Right.
This didn't come to me for years. Right.
And why would it?
And exactly. And it wasn't until I think 94 that I had even got on my radar that you weren't interested in doing Scientology anymore. And I think at that point I was writing up reports and trying to get Flag to do something about it, and nobody from Flag was interested in doing anything about it. I could never really get anybody to do anything, even though I was trying to. And then I joined the Sea Org in 1995, and again, tried to make some noise about it here and there, but really, it was a done deal with you at that point.
Yeah.
So I was, trying to keep the, stoke the fire a little bit, give her good news, that sort of thing, but never really worked.
You did a lot of that.
I tried. I really tried. It's my little not so subtle campaign.
Yeah, you did.
But that didn't really get anywhere.
And I don't think that I ever thought, or I didn't think for a long time, that Scientology was bad or wrong, or I never even thought of it as a cult. I never thought of it as a cult. Nobody ever brought it to my attention that that's what it was, or if they did, I didn't pay any attention to them. But I knew that there was something very wrong with the way it was being operated. And I guess I still had this idea that if Ron knew, he wouldn't let all this happen. So I was still in that for a long time. But I wasn't actively involved and I had no reason to be actively involved anymore in it.
Right.
So, but I still believed in the principles that worked for me, because there was something that I read early on, that Ron wrote, "What's true for you is true." And that was what I took away from it. And that's what I took away from the Catholic Church, too. It was, okay, well, these are the things that I've made part of my character and that are reasonable to me. And these are the things that, this is crazy, this, thing that the Catholic Church is saying, I'm not going to do that. Or this thing that Scientology is saying, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I tried to stay aligned to my own principles. But I will say that there were Scientology principles that added to my own, just like there were things from the Catholic Church that I took away from that. And so I just kind of made it my own for what I wanted it for. But that was part of that whole reconciliation that I did for a long time. to realize that I'm okay. I'm okay with all of that as part of my story, even though I don't remember a lot of it.
Well, I think that point you made about balance is an important one.
Yeah, it is.
You know, actually, I think that's a very important point.
It
you know?
is.
So.
Because I think that we all strive for that. You know, it's like a juggler with a bunch of balls. You try to keep them in the air for as long as you can, and sometimes a couple of them crash, and you start all over again. But when you've got things in balance, it's your life is good.
Exactly.